Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava. Jaya Kunja Bihari. Kopidana Ballabha Grivardhari Jaya Grivardhari. Kopidana Ballabha Grivardhari Jaya Grivardhari. Yasodanandana Braja Dhanaranjana Jaya Braja Dhanaranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Dhanaranjana Jaya Braja Dhanaranjana. Yamunadhiravarachari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Yamunadhiravarachari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Gopidana Ballabha Grivardhari Jaya Grivardhari. Yasodanandana Raja Janaranjana Jaya Brada Janaranjana Yasodanandana Raja Janaranjana Jaya Brada Janaranjana Yamunatira Bharachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Yamunatira Bharachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Prabhudakacharya Asadhara Satushi Shiman His Divine Grace Lacey Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Haribo Slava Zarani Bhaktam Slava Shri Guru Shri Gurangi Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhute Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tiramane Namaste Saraswati Deve Kauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Siddharne Om Agyanatvarandasya Gananjana Stalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stabitam Yena Bhutle Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Pandeham Shigaro Shiyuta Parakamalam Shigarum Vaishnavam Scha Shirupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Vrijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Svitam Scha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Sudha Devi Pranamami Hri Priye Vanchakapa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patiranam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 21, The Dynasty of Bharata, text number 8. So Ranti Dev is giving away all his food, and he's going to give away even his water now. So, translation, when the Sudra went away, another guest arrived, surrounded by dogs, and said, "O king, I and my company of dogs are very hungry. Please give us something to eat." With great respect, King Ranti Deva offered the balance of the food to the dogs, and the master of the dogs would come as guests. The king offered them all respects and obeisances. Thereafter only the drinking water remained, and there was only enough to satisfy one person. But when the king was just about to drink it, a Chandala appeared and said, "O king, although I am low-born, kindly give me some drinking water." Grieved at hearing the pitiable words of the poor fatigued Chandala, King Rantidev spoke the following nectarian words. Purport. Maharaj Rantidev's words were like amrita or nectar, and therefore aside from rendering bodily service to an aggrieved person, by his words alone the king could save the life of anyone who might hear him. Text 8:12. Na kamaye ham gatim ishvarat param astardi yuktam apunarbhavam va artim parpadye kila deha bhajam antaksito yena bhavant yadu kaha nakamaye ham gatim ishvarad param astardi yuktam apanarbhavam va artim prapadye kila deha bhajam antaksito yena bhavant yadukaha. Taksito yena bhavat yadukaha. Nakamaye ham gatim ishvarat param astardi yuktam apanarbhavam va artim prapadye kila deha bhajam antaksito yena bhavant yadukaha. Ladies. Nakamaye ham gatim ishvarat param sardi yuktam apamarbhavam va Atani Vibhadye Kila Deha Bhajam Antaksito Yena Bhavantya Dukaha. You can also chant. Nakamaye Ham Gatim Ishvarat Param Stardi Yuktam Apanara Bhavamba Artim Prabhadye Kila Deha Bhajam Antaksito Yena Bhavantya Dukaha Not Kamaye Desire Aham I Gatim Destination Ishvarat from the Supreme Personality of Godhead Param Great Ashta Ridi Yuktam composed of the 8 kinds of mystic perfection. Apunaha Bhavam cessation of repeated birth, liberation, salvation. Va either Artim sufferings. Prapadye I accept. Akila Deha Vajam of all living entities. Antaksitaha staying among them. Yena by which Bhavanti they become. Adukaha without distress. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. I do not pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the 8 perfections of mystic yoga, nor for salvation from repeated birth and death. I only want to stay among all the living entities and suffer all distresses on their behalf, so that they may be freed from suffering. Purport. Vasudev Dutt made a similar statement to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, requesting the Lord to liberate all living entities in His presence. Vasudev Dutt submitted that if they were unfit to be liberated, he himself would take all their sinful reactions and suffer personally so that the Lord might deliver them. A Vaishnava is therefore described as being paradukkha dukhi, very much aggrieved by the sufferings of others. As such, a Vaishnava engages in activities for the real welfare of human society. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadhyade Satarne. Here is described a level of compassion which is inconceivable. Of course, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was requested by Vasudev Dutt to liberate all the living entities in the entire universe, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that actually it wasn't necessary that Vasudev Dutt had to suffer, because Krishna is completely capable of liberating all the living entities, and no one has to suffer as a result. But the mood of the real devotee is like that. Now, if we look into our hearts and we think, well, I don't quite have that mood. Matter of fact, if I had to suffer even for one person in the universe, I'd suffer and they go back to Godhead and I'd just stay here forever suffering. I mean, how many of us would volunteer to do that? Even for one person. What to speak of everyone. There's a lot of living entities in this universe, and there's a lot of sinful reactions going on. And I think we probably wouldn't be so much inclined to suffer for all living entities in the universe eternally, and that they all go back to Godhead, and that we're the only ones left here suffering. We'd rather inconceivable to have such a mentality. But this is what's declared, that Vasudeva Dutt had, and that Ranti Deva had a similar type of mentality. Now, of course, for the devotee, there is actually no suffering, because the devotee is actually not living in the material world. He's living in the spiritual platform of consciousness, of which there's only bliss, knowledge eternally. But on the other hand, the compassion can also exist in unlimited ecstasy also. But that doesn't mean that if Vasudeva Dutt, Krishna said, all right, I'll give you all the sinful reactions for all living entities, and they all go back to Godhead and you stay here. First of all, Krishna wouldn't do that. It's not that Krishna is enjoying watching the living entities suffering. And therefore he's very reluctant to end their sinful reactions, because otherwise he wouldn't get such enjoyment anymore. Or that Krishna is not quite as compassionate as Vasudeva Dutt or Ranti Deva, that he doesn't mind watching all the living entities suffering eternally. No, Krishna is unlimitedly compassionate also, and that the sinful reactions are necessary. Therefore, when Vyasadeva was watching or meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead to understand what the truth was, it is said in the Bhagavatam that he fixed his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhakti-yogena manasi samyak pranihite male. In his pure consciousness, he was able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Apaishat purusham purnam, the complete whole, the complete personality of Godhead. Bhakti-yogena manasi samyak pranihita male. Apaishat purushan purnam maya chat tad apashraya. And then he saw Maya was there. Now, it is not that Krishna hasn't noticed Maya. If he would have noticed Maya, he would have gotten rid of her. And therefore, it's just Krishna is a little bit unconscious. Therefore, he doesn't know that Maya is chastising all living entities. And therefore, although he's unlimitedly compassionate, still he's just unaware of the sufferings of the soul. Or as I mentioned before, one rabbi, his name was Krishna. Just so happens his name was Krishna. His philosophy was that God is actually a good person, but he's become so old, he's become senile. And because he's senile, he can't really control things anymore. And therefore, bad things happen to good people. And good things happen to bad people. But he's trying. He's just senile, so he can't do very much. But he's trying the best he can, so we shouldn't blame the old guy. But there's a rumor that soon one younger angel will take over and things should improve. But that's actually not true. Krishna is completely capable of liberating all living entities, but unfortunately all living entities do not want to be liberated. They rather stay in the material world and pretend to be God rather than go back to the spiritual world and serve the actual God. Of course, due to illusion, the soul, he can't even really pretend to be God. He can only imagine it. He takes his body, which he's imprisoned in, and which is demanding so many things from him, as the supreme. So the soul has simply substituted a temporary material body for the supreme. Independent, that's not possible. The soul cannot be independent. He cannot even be the controller of even one atom in the material world. But he can imagine, by Krishna's mercy, he can imagine that he's the controller of so many things. Although he's not controlling anything, he can't even control his own mind. Of course, the soul makes choices, and therefore he can choose which type of illusion he wants to be in. And the soul, by good association, can also choose to get out of illusion by voluntarily acting as an instrument for Krishna, under the direction of Krishna's representatives, and the super soul within the heart. So that's the only choice of the soul. Now, as far as liberating all living entities in the universe, that's should be the mood. That's Prahlad Maharaj's mood. That's the mood of all the great devotees. Naiva dveja paradaratya vaitaranyas tvavirya gayana mahamrita magnichita. Lord Nrsingadev asked Prahlad Maharaj, I'm willing to give you any benediction you want. Luckily, Lord Nrsingadev is not giving us any benediction that we want, because we might ask for the wrong thing and get even more entangled than we are already. So Krishna doesn't give out benedictions like that so easily. But he asked Prahlad, what do you want? Anything you want, I'll give you. So Prahlad Maharaj said, Naiva dvije paradaratya vaitaranyas. I don't really want any benediction. I don't even want liberation, to cross over the sufferings of material existence. Now we may think, well, I don't want that either. Oh, really? We're not interested in ending our suffering? Then if we're not interested in ending our suffering, then why is it anything goes wrong with us, with our body, then immediately our mood changes. That if we're not interested in ending, we do everything possible to ending our suffering. That's the journey of the soul in the material world. Somehow or another, try to figure out how to end our suffering. That's called our happiness, our enjoyment. The less we suffer, the more we think we're enjoying. But Prahlad Maharaj wasn't interested. He had actually an opportunity. But, so what was wrong with Prahlad? No, there's nothing wrong with Prahlad, because he says, Vaitaranya Tvavirya Maha Magnachitak Naiva Dvije Paradratya Vaitaranyas Tvavirya Mahana Magnachitak Soche Vimukhachetas Indriyartha. That Prahlad Maharaj said, because whenever I chanted Tvavira Mahana, whenever I chant about your glories, then my consciousness merges into an ocean of happiness. Now those are just words, but we require some experience like that. In other words, even a little experience of becoming conscious of Krishna can give us a little bit of an indication of what it would be like to live in a world where we have nothing to hanker for or lament over. We're simply happy. Hearing about Krishna's glories. Mahamnachita. So che vimukha chaitasa indriyaratan. So but Maharaj Nrsingadev said, but you look unhappy. He said, yes, I look unhappy because I'm not unhappy for myself. So say Trimukta Chaitasa Indriyarata Maya Sukhayam Udvahato Vimudan. I'm unhappy to see all these fools that are suffering for want of knowledge of you. And therefore I'm working hard so that they can be delivered. So Prahlad Maharaj, who's in ecstasy, he had nothing to gain, but he had a purpose. He had a purpose to serve Krishna, and he understood that the best purpose to serve Krishna in the material world is to preach Krishna consciousness. There are certain things we can't do in the spiritual world that we can do here. One of them is preach. The spiritual world, you can't go there and convince people that Krishna is God. You can act as an instrument for Krishna to help anyone elevate themselves to Krishna consciousness. Of course, that's all they do in the spiritual world, is help each other become more Krishna conscious. But everyone there is already Krishna conscious. But here, there's an opportunity to act as an instrument for Krishna and help people start becoming Krishna conscious and assist them in their journey to revive their relation with Krishna. So that's one thing we can do here. We can't do in the spiritual world. And it's a great opportunity because Krishna says that one becomes very dear to him if one acts as his compassion on behalf of him in a compassionate way. Now we may not think we're being very compassionate, but that's the best we can do here at this present time in terms of displaying compassion. Now we could go out and we could feed the poor. That's also compassionate. We can give them prasadam. That's even more compassionate. But tomorrow they'll come back and they'll still be hungry. Matter of fact, giving them prasadam is a great opportunity, especially if they think it's in relation to Krishna. Then they might become attracted to Krishna. The Krishna seems to taste quite well. Maybe I should get more of a taste of Krishna. So then they learn you can also chant Hare Krishna. You can actually become Krishna conscious. And then in the spiritual world, even spiritual consciousness, you can have a big feast every day of Krishna prasadam. And that feast is eternal. It's so nice. If you take one galabjaman in the spiritual world, every time you remember it, it becomes even more tasty just by remembering it. In any case, we have our morning program, our evening program, is meant so we can get some experience of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, if it's not an experience, then we have really very little chance of becoming compassionate to anyone. So at least we should be compassionate to ourselves and somehow or another bring our bodies to the program, see that our bodies are engaged in Krishna service the best we can. That's being compassionate at least to one soul, ourselves. And if we come to the platform of Krishna consciousness that Vasudev Dutt was on, that Prahlad Maharaj was on, then we might become, that Ranti Devi was on, then we might actually feel compassionate to others. If we're enjoying within, and we see others are not enjoying they could, then that will invoke a kind of compassion, which Krishna has eternally. It's not that Krishna is simply in the heart of all living entities. He couldn't care less. He thinks, well, you're in the body of a dog now, you deserve it. You're lucky to get dog food. No, Krishna is always compassionate, but his compassion doesn't interfere with his role as the Paramatma in the heart. He has to be neutral. He can't interfere with the desires of living entities, their desire to be apart from him, because otherwise the relationship would not be proper. Krishna doesn't want to force anyone to love him, nor does he want to, if he revealed himself in the heart of all living entities, they become very disturbed. The very person I've been trying to get away from is now here in my heart. I can't get rid of him. There's nowhere I can go. He's going to follow me. So people would actually, they freak out. They would actually become even more disturbed than they are now. Therefore, Krishna only reveals himself voluntarily. And indeed, even if Vasudev Dutt or even if Ranti Dev accepted all the sinful reactions of all living entities, they still have to stay here to learn their lessons. It's one thing becoming free from all sinful reactions, becoming neutral, but then there's something called positive devotional service, which has to be developed. Even after liberation from all material concepts, one still has to develop one's spiritual consciousness or spiritual muscle in order to become qualified to associate with Krishna. Because unless one comes to a certain degree of transcendental ecstasy, there's every possibility of becoming attracted again to some material existence. But the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness has to reach the stage that everything else is forgotten about. So that takes some time. First of all, our main point is to become liberated, to become free from all our material attachments, come to the platform of steadily being Krishna conscious, and not becoming deviated. And then we can actually spontaneously develop our love for Krishna. In any case, Krishna he has a mission here, and he leaves that mission to his devotees to assist him in, and this is a great opportunity for us to develop our Krishna consciousness. It can't be developed so easily being a bhajan and nandi. It can be developed, but it'll take many, long time. But an opportunity to tell others in the mood of being a servant of Krishna, of being his representative about him, that's a great opportunity to develop that consciousness. And then Krishna becomes compassionate to ourselves, and when Krishna becomes compassionate to ourselves, then we can proportionally become compassionate to others also, or at least enthusiastic to distribute Krishna's message, because we know how much Krishna is pleased by it and how much we'll benefit from it also. So we can't give up our selfishness, because the person we love the most is ourselves. So we can't give that up very easily unless we find someone much more attractive than our own selves. But right now, that's only Krishna can actually be more attractive to our own selves. So as we develop our attraction for Krishna, then gradually our self-centered desires will go away. But our real self, we should know at least at this point, that our real self-interest is Krishna. That's all. If we want to be selfish, then we should try to get Krishna, because that's the greatest selfishness. And if we want to be foolish, and we want to maintain a false sense of selfishness, then we'll think our interest is this body or things in relation to this body. But that's just a mistaken sense of selfishness. We can't give up selfishness all of a sudden, but we should know what our real self-interest is and go for that. And then when we realize how we become free from all material problems and concepts, then we'll actually fall in love with Krishna when we become conscious of Krishna. And we actually fall in love with Krishna, then we even become completely selfless. But right now we're not in love with Krishna. We're not even that much aware of Krishna, perhaps. But we are aware of the material world, and that's not our self-interest. So we just have to become aware of what our real self-interest is, and then we can eventually, when Krishna reveals himself, then our real nature, being completely selfless, will be there. Just like now, selflessly, or maybe not completely selflessly, but we do everything for this body and this mind. We're quite attached to it. Matter of fact, we'll sacrifice even what's our own self-interest, which is Krishna, for this body and mind. We're so much enamored with our body and mind. We'll even sacrifice our own eternal interest for it. Just see how compassionate we are for our body and mind. So that's just a misconception, that's all. That's what our philosophy is all meant for. Just to convince us that actually our real interest is Krishna, and that our selfless desire to serve this body and mind and things in relation to it is not really our interest. Nor does the body appreciate it. I never got a letter from my body. Thank you very much for all your service. You've been serving very well for so many decades. I really appreciate it. No one else may appreciate it, but the body never sends you a letter of appreciation. Matter of fact, it says, "You rascal, everyone else is serving their body and mind better than you are. Try to get it together and do some real service for me." I got a whole list of things for you to do. Try to do them one at a time at least. Try and be sincere. And even we do something wrong, and it said, "Kamadi nam katidas palitas dorni deshas." Even we do something completely out of our conscience, something we know is completely wrong. But if it's for the body, all is forgiven. At the end of the day, even though people may criticize me and I don't like it, but I know deep in my heart that I did it for my body and my mind. So it was actually worth it. It was a sacrifice for the Supreme. So that's the problem. We're not embarrassed by whatever we do for our body and mind, ultimately. there's no end to the suffering the body and the mind gives us. And the body's never stopping. It always wants more and more and more. It's never satisfied, and it never stops the suffering, and we're never apologetic for anything we do. And that goes on eternally. In this body, the next body, in any species of life, it's the same thing. Demand after demand, problem after problem to solve, and never any appreciation from any body we have. Maybe you get some appreciation. If you're an ant, the queen ant says, "Thank you very much for bringing the sugar," but she may not share it with you. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna. You said that Krishna is not forcing us to love him, but actually we don't have any other choice. If you don't love him, we suffer. So.
Yes, but that's the choice everyone takes. That's their choice. Prabhupada was giving some talk, was being interviewed by one lady reporter, and she said, "What's wrong with killing your child?" So Prabhupada said, "Well, you have a choice." He said, "The government gives you the choice. Either you can kill your child if you have become pregnant by a man who went away. You have a choice. Either you can kill your child, or you can take help from the government to support it. Is that a very good choice?" Prabhupada said. Prabhupada said, "Well, that's your choice. Take help from the government or kill the child." Prabhupada, what kind of choice, is that? In other words, if you have illicit sex and you get pregnant, then either you have a choice. Either you kill the child, or you have to raise it somehow or another. If you can't do that, then you have to take help from the government. So is that a very good choice? No. And some lady said, "Well, that's my choice. That's your choice." So people they take their choice. They think this is a choice. Either brand B beer or brand A beer. That's their choice. Although it's not a very good choice, either one, it's not a good choice. But they think that they're free to choose. Therefore they feel that they're in control. What's that?
Why the help from government is not good?
Why the help from the government is not? Because
in this situation, yes.
Why is it not good?
Yeah,
because you become entangled in taking help from the government. It's not that anything in this material world is free. You have to pay for it. You have to come back and work for the government in your next lifetime. Besides that, where does the government get the money from? From people doing sinful activities. So you're being supported by someone who's sinful, you'll also get entangled in such a support.
This is probably if you become grateful, thankful for their help. What about if you just take this as granted, their help?
If you take it for granted?
Yes, like you don't feel appreciation.
If you don't feel, even if you feel appreciation, who do you feel appreciation for? Who's the government? The laws of material nature don't depend upon simply our feeling of appreciation or lack of it. We get entangled either way.
Okay, thank you.
Better, of course, taking help from the government than killing the child, but taking help from the government is going to also be entangling. The best thing is not to have illicit sex, not to get pregnant by a man who's not going to support you. Otherwise, you get entangled. So and one can't avoid illicit sex unless one becomes Krishna conscious, especially in Kali Yuga. So the better choice is try to become Krishna conscious and utilize the senses in Krishna's service, and be careful what we do, what we eat, how we sleep, how we mate, and how we defend. We should be Krishna conscious in doing those things. Then we'll have, that's the good choice. Everything else is bad to different degrees. Yes.
Gurudev, like you mentioned that, if somebody takes help from the government, they get entangled because the government is also getting money from sinful people. So I have a question: if the government is supporting students for scholarship, they also get entangled?
Yeah, anything we do that's outside, we get entangled if we don't utilize it in Krishna service. If we actually think that I'm going to utilize, if we utilize it in Krishna service, then there's less chance of getting entangled if we actually utilize it and become Krishna conscious. Otherwise than that, we become, in our next lifetime, we may have to come back for enjoy or suffer the reactions of what we're doing. Nothing goes unnoticed by Krishna. There's no free lunch, as they say.
I think I'm okay because I did not get the scholarship.
Okay.
I don't have to work for the government.
What's that?
I'm not entangled in this.
No, we're already entangled.
I know. I mean, I didn't get any benefit from the government.
Yeah, anyhow. We should be, in any case, we should become conscious of Krishna, take to the process, try to make some improvement, so that even if we are entangled presently and in the future, at least we'll be less entangled. We'll be more inclined to utilize whatever energy we have and utilize it in Krishna service. And therefore, yeah, to a certain extent, sure, of course. But we shouldn't take it a donation to us. We may take it on behalf of Krishna if it's actually going to be utilized. But there has to be some discrimination too. Just like there was one, quote, devotee who used to give big donations, but he was a drug dealer. And his idea was that if I give donations to Krishna, he's also involved in the crimes. So being a partner in the crime, he's definitely not going to tell on me. But it didn't work out like that. He had so many kilos of heroin in his car, and he got intoxicated. And he fell asleep, and they caught him. And he used the excuse, he tried to get out of it, that he was a devotee. He was doing it for God. It didn't look very good, though, for Krishna. But Krishna didn't get entangled. Then the Prabhupada said after that we have to be careful about who we accept donations from. That's even the nectar of instruction. We can't accept every contribution from everyone. Prabhupada was walking along on the pier in San Francisco with his sannyasi disciples, and one fisherman offered Prabhupada a fish that he just caught. And he said, no, you take it and enjoy. And then Prabhupada proceeded further on, turned to his sannyasi disciples and said, and suffer. So we should be careful.
I'm sorry, I think further, when you distribute books, you don't know, to who you distribute.
It's all right, but we're not collecting the money for our sense gratification. We're collecting the money so we can be utilized to print more books and for Krishna's service. And even if some householder, he gets some profit from it, should be utilizing it to maintain his house in Krishna service, his family in Krishna service. So the mentality, there's a sense, I'm not doing it for my selfish sense gratification, I'm doing it to give people transcendental knowledge and to utilize their energies in Krishna service. Then we won't be entangled the more we're absorbed in that consciousness. Because the sense will be there, we're an instrument for Krishna. This is Krishna who's doing it, not me. But that sense of Krishna is doing it, not me, is diminished when we actually start thinking about my profit and what I'm going to get from it, either gross or subtly. It gets diminished, that's all. That's how we get entangled. Anything else? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Just want to check if I understood correctly. You said that Krishna gives Prahlad Maharaj such benediction that he asks him whatever he wants. Is that because he knew that he wouldn't misuse it, and if so,
Yeah, of
we
course.
can check ourselves also?
Yeah, of course. He understood Prahlad Maharaj is a pure devotee. But he tests his devotee too. Who knows? I mean, people who probably chose the wrong benediction didn't make it into the Bhagavatam. But Prahlad Maharaj passed the test. So Krishna knows everything, but still he shows the glory of his devotee by giving them the opportunity to make their choice. He doesn't, he didn't ask for Randikashipu, I'll give you any benediction you want. He asked Prahlad, who was a pure devotee, because he knew he'd utilize it properly.
In that way we can check ourselves if we don't get such something, that we should understand that we would likely misuse it.
Maybe, maybe not. It's not the Krishna. It's not a one-way thing. We want something, Krishna says no. And Krishna may give it to us later. He may just want to purify us, or whatever reason. Krishna knows better than we do. It's not that Krishna says, oh, you're not qualified. But Krishna just knows better the future than we do. Therefore we accept Krishna's decision. Because it's best for us. We know Krishna's always looking for our real interest. Not that Krishna didn't give it to me, now I'm lamenting that I'm a bad devotee. No, Krishna may be saving us from so many problems. Anything else? Kala Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.